You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I am your host, Steph, and today I'm going to be previewing the 49ers offense going up against the Cardinals defense. Monday Night Football, baby. There's nothing like it. But before I do that, let's talk about some 49ers news really quickly. There's never any shortage of that. The 49ers did release quarterback Kurt Benkert and wide receiver Tajay Sharp from their practice squad, and they also signed Daz Newsome, wide receiver, and quarterback Jason Eason to fill their spots on to the practice squad. The good news is, after the game against the Chargers, no new injuries were suffered after that game, so seems like the 49ers injury luck is perhaps heading in the right direction. We sure hope so. The 49ers do remain in the 7th seed after week 10, and the Seahawks lost to the Bucs in Germany, which I know we're all happy about. So every game from here on out becomes all the more important for this team. Next on the docket, as I mentioned, the Arizona Cardinals in Mexico City as the 49ers look to stay undefeated within their division. And the 49ers are practicing in Colorado Springs this week to acclimate themselves to the elevation. So they did make the trip out here. I believe they got here either yesterday or the day before. What's going on, Sin? Thank you for joining. So I believe they arrived in Colorado, I think, yesterday or 2 days ago. And they started practicing here today. It is cold. It is snowy. I am about an hour north of where they're practicing, closer to Denver, and it has been snowing. It's about 20 degrees here today, and so similar to what the 49ers are facing down in Colorado Springs. But let me tell you why it's not a big deal that the 49ers are practicing outside in cold weather. It's not going to matter on Monday, on game day. It's not going to matter one bit that they practiced in the cold. But what will matter is the fact that they've gotten used to the elevation, the altitude. For those of you who don't know, it really does make a huge difference going from, a place like the Bay Area that is pretty much sea level to going to a place with high altitude, like Mexico City, which, by the way, Mexico City is even at higher altitude than, Colorado Springs. But like I said, 49ers just doing whatever they can to at least work their way up there, right? It's tough going from, like I said, California to something that high of that altitude like it is in Mexico City. So they're doing the very smart thing in preparing themselves for that, because let me tell you, if you don't, it's a good chance you're going to be gassed. It doesn't matter if you're an athlete. The altitude does not care. The air is a lot thinner. So it doesn't matter if you're conditioned, if you're in shape, it still affects you. And so to get used to it now definitely gives the 49ers an advantage. Let's look at some of these comments here. What's going on, Bryant? Glad you could join. What's going on, Melissa? Glad you could make it. So they're practicing in Colorado Springs. I'm glad that they're close by, and I'm also glad, like I said, that they're getting used to the elevation, because their body won't be shocked by it when they arrive in Mexico City and when they play the game on Monday. So they're doing the smart thing here. Does not matter that they're cold. A little cold, little snow, never hurt anybody. They'll be okay, I promise. Charvarius Ward did not practice today, though, due to a personal matter, but Kyle Shanahan did say that he should be good to play for Monday Night Football. Eric Armstead also not practicing, although I have to figure his return is probably close. I mean, the next 2 games, it makes sense for him to not play and then be ready for the game against the Dolphins. So we'll see on Eric Armstead, but still not practicing as of this week, so likely won't be available or probably won't be available Monday night. Don't expect him out there. Javon Kinlaw definitely won't be available. He didn't even make the trip to Colorado Springs, so still waiting on his return as well. What's going on, Niner Gang? Wolfcast. Glad you can join. But the good thing is, in this game, okay, the Cardinals are in shambles. They've lost Zach Ertz for the remainder of the season. Kyler Murray may or may not play. He missed last week with a hamstring injury. Colt McCoy is dealing with a minor knee injury. And Cliff Kingsbury said he will decide later in the week who will start against the 49ers. Both quarterbacks were practicing for the Cardinals today, both Murray and McCoy. And if Murray's practicing, I have to imagine that that's probably a sign that he is going to try to play. I mean, the game isn't until Monday, so probably a good sign for him. What I don't want, and what the Cardinals have done to the 49ers before, is they wait. I don't want the Cardinals to wait until the very last minute to announce who the starter is going to be and kind of leave it up to the 49ers to prepare for both. Because last time that happened, pretty sure we lost to Colt McCoy. So Cliff Kingsbury might try to swing that advantage to the Cardinals, trying to make the 49ers prepare for both. But I hope it's Kyler Murray. I mean, dealing with a hamstring or coming off the hamstring injury, he may not be as fast or as willing to scramble if he's been dealing with that. So I'd rather see Kyler Murray. And surprisingly enough, the 49ers have had issues going up against Colt McCoy for some reason. So, but I do think that if they know that Colt McCoy is going to be the starter, they would be better prepared, but we'll see. But anyway, this episode of the offense, this episode of 49 Carats podcast is an offense preview episode, right? So we're going to talk about the 49ers offense and how they match up against the Cardinals defense. So let's get on over. Let's look at some comments really quick. Michelle says, good move by the Niners to get assimilated to the elevation. Absolutely. They're the smart team here. The Cardinals haven't done that. They have no plans to, test out the elevation early. So they're going to be a little shocked when they get down to Mexico City. And more than likely, it will have an impact in the game. Melissa says, Steph, you sounded like you were going to burst out singing The Cold Never Bothered Me Anyway. I don't think I know that song, but that's pretty funny. And then Niner Gang says, like Kyle Shanahan does every chance he gets. Speaking about the fact that the Cardinals are leaving us on a cliffhanger, no pun intended, leaving us on a cliffhanger, about the quarterback situation, and we don't know which quarterback. Yes, Kyle Shanahan does do that all the time, but it's okay when we do it because we don't have to worry about it. So let's talk about the 49ers offense going up against, the Cardinals defense. Like I said, the Cardinals are in shambles, dealing with a lot of issues right now, and I just wanted to bring up a few interesting stats, right, that I think will help us feel a little bit better about this matchup. Arizona defense in the first half, allowing an average of 13 points this season in the first half. 9 points in their last 3 games. However, in the second half, they're allowing an average of 18.3 points. That's pretty high to allow that in the second half. And what have the 49ers been doing? Well, I feel like the 49ers offense have kind of started off a little bit slow in the first half, and then they score a little bit more in the second half. So this could be a stat here that actually favors the 49ers offense in that regard. And I think the 49ers offense should have no trouble scoring against the Arizona Cardinals. At least I would hope, because let me tell you, let me explain. And I have slides. I have pictures, okay, for the video viewers here. But for the audio listeners, I'll read it off. The Arizona Cardinals currently rank 32nd in allowed yards after the catch per reception. So they're allowing the most yards after the catch per reception. They're also allowing the most yards after the catch per game. They are 30th in opponent completion percentage. They are 28th in opponent first downs per game. They are 28th in red zone defense. They are 28th in opponent passing first downs per game. And apologies for those of you watching on video because some of this gets cut off here, but I'll say it. 27th in opposing passing touchdowns per game. And they're 26th in sack percentage. I would say all of these things kind of favor the 49ers, right? And in particular, the 49ers passing game, right? So this might be a game where we see Jimmy Garoppolo have a great game. We see some of our receivers have a better game because a lot of times we're used to, our running backs kind of carrying the team. But I think this is going to be a game where the offense is going to be able to move the ball through the air against the Cardinals, and they don't even have to throw very far because as you see here, the Cardinals are allowing a lot of yards after the catch, the most in the league. And that's the 49ers' bread and butter when it comes to their passing game. So look out. And as good friend of the pod, Jordan, pointed out on Twitter earlier, Jimmy Garoppolo's career stats versus the Cardinals are actually pretty good. 1,590 passing yards, an average of 318 yards per game, 13 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and a passer rating of 112.7. So pretty good. Jimmy Garoppolo plays well historically. He has played well against the Arizona Cardinals. And as you see, as a passer, right? I mean, again, this tells me that the 49ers have an opportunity to have a good game through the air. And so let's look at the 49ers offensive line and who might be in trouble against the Cardinals defensive line, right? This week, there's been a lot of talk about Mike McGlinchey, okay, lately, all right? And he'll be seeing a lot of J.J. Watt in this one. And, for all of the J.J. Watt is washed talk, I would say this could be a big matchup in this game, potentially. Watt, he does have 6 sacks on the season. He had one last week against the Rams. He also had 6 pressures last week, as well as 4 quarterback hits in 1 hurry. Now, we do know that the Rams' offensive line has been poor this season, but I simply bring up these stats as a cautionary tale, if you will. This might be a challenge for Mike McGlinchey this week. Maybe the 49ers want to line up Kittle or Juszczyk, have him in there a little bit to help him out. McGlinchey will also see a lot of Marcus Golden on base downs as well. And Spencer Burford, will see some of J.J. Watt as well. So on that side, the right side of the 49ers offensive line, that's what they'll be up against. But yeah, McGlinchey, he is who he is, all right? We're just going to have to take what he gives us. And so hopefully it's a good game by him, but you might see some plays that frustrate you. I'm just preparing you now. But the good thing is Jake Brendel, as you see here, he's going to be going up against Leki Fotu, which appears to be an easier matchup for Brendel. Fotu is ranked 117 out of 122 qualifying defensive linemen. So he's right there towards the bottom of rankings against defensive linemen or interior defensive linemen. And Trent Williams and Aaron Banks, they're going to be seeing a lot of Victor Dimukeji. I hope I'm saying his name right. And he shouldn't pose too much of an issue. They'll also see Zach Allen, who has 4 sacks on the season, including one last week. Now, let's look at the Cardinals linebackers and their safety. So their linebackers, Zaven Collins, he's pretty good, and Isaiah Simmons is great as a pass rusher, actually. They like to use him to generate pressure, and he does have 2 sacks on the season as a linebacker. And they aren't terrible in coverage either. And, one thing I wanted to point out is George Kittle's been pretty quiet lately. I mean, his last 2 games, he's had 6 total targets, 4 receptions, 60 yards, and a touchdown. That's in total, the last 2 games combined. Not great, Bob. I mean, when you look at how he was doing the previous 2 weeks against Atlanta and Kansas City, he had 9 targets and was over 6 receptions. So, not sure what that's about. But like I said, with the Arizona Cardinals being vulnerable through the air, this could be a game where George Kittle can see a little bit more involvement, potentially. And he will be going up against his fave, Buda Baker, anyway. So, I don't know. Could be a good game. We'll see. All right, let's talk about the 49ers wide receivers. Let's talk about Deebo Samuel first. Deebo Samuel, he had 4 targets last week, 2 receptions for 24 yards. He also had 4 carries for 27 yards last week. That's good for an average of 6.8 yards per carry. And I have to wonder because the previous week that Deebo played, it was against the Chiefs, and that was before McCaffrey played in that game, right? But I think he didn't play that much. So just really quickly let's go over his rushing stats from that game. He had 2 carries for 3 yards, good for an average of 1.5 yards per carry. Not great. So you see the difference now against the Chargers, which of course the Chargers are not one of the better run defending league teams. They're one of the worst, but still I do feel like Christian McCaffrey being back there and posing a threat as well helps Deebo Samuel as a wide back because it does allow him to have a little more space to work. There's not as much focus on Deebo Samuel. My fear before was that teams were prepared for Deebo Samuel. Anytime they saw him in the backfield, they know it was a play for him. And now it's kind of like you don't really know because we could see Deebo Samuel with Christian McCaffrey in the backfield, and wherever Christian McCaffrey is, he potentially could get the ball. So the defense does have to account for him, and that, of course, opens things up for Deebo Samuel. So that could, be something to look at in following games. And I know his involvement in the pass game, he was pretty quiet, 2 receptions for 24 yards, but any way that he can get the ball and be, effective is good for the team. So really quickly, let's look at some comments really here. You guys are blowing me up. Let's see. Melissa said, wow, you never heard of Let It Go from Frozen. Oh, yeah, I've heard of that song, Melissa. Yes, let it go, right? Excuse the tone deaf, but Melissa says, I hope so. We had only 3 wins versus Cards under Shanny. Niner Gang says, Cards might want to be careful with what they wish for. They stack the box and try to force Jimmy G to pass. It'll probably backfire. Yes. This season, they've been better against the run than they have against the pass anyway. So it's not a surprise, especially going against the 49ers. Most teams wanting to stop the run game first and then try to force Jimmy Garoppolo to throw. But yeah, in this case, they are vulnerable through the air. So it could absolutely backfire. Bryant says, is Baker hurt? As in Buda Baker. I think he was I think he might still play though, but hold on, let me see. I didn't see the practice report for Buda Baker today. One moment while I look that up. He's not on the. All right, I'll keep you posted. If you guys find out, let me know. Melissa says last I checked, he was still banged up. And Bryant said he has an ankle injury, but might still play. Yeah, I mean, you got to remember the game is on Monday, so they get an extra day to, rest and heal up potentially. So I expect Buda Baker to play, but that's just me. He might not. It's good call out. Let's talk about Brandon Ayuk. All right. This team's wide receiver 1, okay? And I said this before the season started. I felt like Brandon Ayuk is unquestioned wide receiver 1 of this team. I mean, even with everything that Deebo Samuel has done, Ayuk is the most well-rounded receiver on this team. He could do it all. And lately, he's been the model of consistency. PFF says he has a 93.7 matchup advantage against the Cardinals secondary. And I don't know what that means or what that is exactly based on. PFF is not exactly great on giving context or like their source of how they've come up with these numbers, but it sounded good. So I thought I'd share that here. 93.7 matchup advantage. The best of the week, I guess, apparently, between wide receiver and secondary matchups. Another potential injury for the Cardinals is their corner, Byron Murphy, who may or may not play. And if he does not, it would be Antonio Hamilton and Marco Wilson. So quick little sidebar there. But on Brandon Ayuk, he has 6 or more receptions and at least 80 yards in each of his last 4 games. You can see here he's, like I said, model of consistency. And I am still waiting and expecting a breakout game for Brandon Ayuk. Like, it just feels like we're on the cusp of it, right? Because this consistency is great, but I feel like he could just go off in any one of these games in the second half of the season, and I'm just waiting for it. Maybe this is the game. It could be. I hope so. Luke the Don here says going to be a heavy dose of Elijah and CMC catching out of the backfield, and they give up a lot of yak. Yes, they do. The Arizona Cardinals, as I mentioned earlier, if you guys missed it, I did say Cardinals 32nd in allowed yards after the catch per reception, 32nd in allowed yards after the catch per game. Like Kyle Shanahan is licking his chomps, looking at something like that. Melissa says Brandon needs to stop losing the ball like Deebo, especially against a division opponent. No easy turnovers, please. That's a good point. That's one of my keys of the game, that the 49ers do have to take care of the ball. And I'll tell you guys why in a bit. I mean, obviously that's a key of any game, right? But against the Cardinals, they need to be careful and take care of the football. Yeah, I agree, Melissa. I mean, Brandon Ayuk has those weird drops that he should just like catch because he's so good and it's like uncharacteristic. But it's also kind of been a thing this season off and on. So yeah, hopefully no drops in this game. We definitely need him to catch all of the balls. And a big difference of what would have been in the previous game against the Chargers, we'd be talking about their red zone efficiency a little differently had he caught that touchdown pass. So it makes a difference, right? And a lot of people complain about how many points the 49ers are scoring, fixing those little mistakes, catching the ball when it's thrown to you, catching the touchdowns, all goes into that. So, as I mentioned, the Cardinals are a little better defending the run than they are the pass, hence a lot of the rankings that I went over earlier. But let's look at how our running backs kind of shape up. And, really the big question and, maybe even surprise of the previous week was this carry split between Elijah Mitchell and Christian McCaffrey. Elijah Mitchell had 18 carries, 89 yards for an average of 4.9 yards per carry, while Christian McCaffrey had 14 carries for 38 yards with 2.7 yards per carry average. Now, do I think that this continues? Yes and no. I mean, do I think that Elijah Mitchell is going to get more carries every single week? No, absolutely. Christian McCaffrey is still the RB1A of this team. And so he's always the first choice in this offense. Although Elijah Mitchell is a hell of a running back as well. He's very talented. And so that's why I call Elijah Mitchell the RB1B, because he's not quite the RB2. I mean, I think they're kind of on even level as far as the involvement that Kyle Shanahan wants each of those guys to have. And it makes sense because I think in a way it's protecting each of them from themselves and their history of injury, right? Being able to keep both of those guys fresh. But in particular, I do think that it is going to vary week to week. And against the Chargers, I think Elijah Mitchell getting a little more carries had more to do with the fact that the Chargers seemed to put a lot of focus and emphasis on stopping Christian McCaffrey. A lot of his carries, didn't go for any gain or just one gain because the Chargers were making it a point of emphasis to stop Christian McCaffrey. And so I think that's why we saw an extra dose of Mitchell in the second half, because it was a bit of an adjustment on Kyle Shanahan's part, seeing how much focus was being put on McCaffrey. So the good thing is Christian McCaffrey's impact does go beyond the ground. He also handled 4 receptions for 39 yards. And so again, as Luke said earlier, it's going to involve, this game will involve a lot of Elijah Mitchell and CMC possibly catching out of the backfield. Although out of both running backs, I think who they prefer to handle catches out of the backfield would be Christian McCaffrey. He's the better pass catching back. And, as illustrated here, the 4 receptions, 39 yards for McCaffrey, 1 reception, -1 yards for Elijah Mitchell. And so, yeah, I think we do see a little more involvement from McCaffrey in this game, and in particular, maybe catching passes out of the backfield. Melissa asks, Steph, dying to hear your thoughts on CMC being shown on Elijah plays and not looking happy. I didn't see that because I was at the game, so a lot of what you guys see on TV, I kind of missed that. So that's kind of the bad thing of seeing games in person, because there's so much that you miss. So I didn't see him looking angry. I haven't heard anyone mention that either, so that's interesting. I'll have to look. Send me a screenshot or something. Ronnie says Kittle versus Buddha. Yeah, Buddha Baker. But we were just discussing a little bit ago the fact that Buddha Baker dealing with an ankle injury, and we'll just have to wait and see if he does end up playing in this game. Really don't know. Something to keep an eye on throughout the week. I think he plays because the game's on Monday, gets the extra day, but we'll just have to wait and see. Melissa says, also, what's your take on Jimmy Ward being bitter about nickel? Should Tashawn Gibson, who could be here long haul, really be benched for Jimmy Ward to play safety? I will say that I do think Jimmy Ward, his natural position, his best position is at safety. That being said, Tashawn Gibson also has done well, at safety. And so I guess I do understand a bit the 49ers stance of wanting to have Jimmy Ward at nickel, because clearly they feel that Jimmy Ward is the best option at nickel for them. And I do think that had Jason Verrett come back, it would have given them the flexibility to then move Diamador Lenore back to nickel and potentially Jimmy Ward back to safety. But since Diamador Lenore has been playing on the outside and he's going to continue to be playing on the outside, I think we're going to continue to see Jimmy Ward playing at nickel because they feel comfortable with Diamador Lenore being on the outside. Obviously, don't have the same trust in Samuel Womack playing at nickel than they do Jimmy Ward. And so, again, I think we're just going to continue to see Jimmy Ward playing at nickel. It's unfortunate. Like, obviously, he has voiced his, not really wanting to do that, but, wanting to be a team player at the same time. And yeah, Jimmy Ward is a free agent after this season. So potentially that could have gone into the decision of wanting to play him there, but who knows? I really don't know. Luke says he didn't look happy, and I assume, Luke, you're talking about Christian McCaffrey, but I like a guy who is hungry to show out, not content with underperforming. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he wasn't happy, but maybe more so frustrated that he wasn't able to be as efficient as he usually is on the ground. Ronnie says Womack at nickel. Yeah, I mean, that's an option to have Womack at nickel, but clearly the 49ers don't have that same level of trust in Womack right now than they do Jimmy Ward. So that probably explains why we'll continue to see Jimmy Ward. But I do also want to say that can change, right? I mean, we don't know what goes on in practice. Kind of the same thing that happened with Diamador Lenore getting those first team reps at nickel before Emmanuel Moseley went down. It was because of him looking good in practice and showing and proving that he was ready for that extended role to be the starter there. Womack could potentially do the same thing, right? But unless that happens, we're going to continue to see Jimmy Ward at nickel. So yeah, Saka Rooney. Melissa says, so we need the Steph a Sakaroni Bosa. All right. I'm gonna have to start charging for my Bosa impressions. I can't be doing them on the spot like this. Yeah, I am gonna have another Bosa video out later this week, probably tomorrow. So just be on the lookout for that. I might say Sakaroni. You never know. All right, let's get back to this this preview here, though. Let's talk about Jimmy Garoppolo now. And to do this, I want to go back to slide 2 because going back to how good Jimmy Garoppolo has played against the Arizona Cardinals in the past, I do think this is gonna be a Jimmy game. And let me tell you some of my keys for this game, while I remind you how poorly the Arizona Cardinals rank in some these aspects here. The 49ers have to take advantage of Arizona's secondary, their vulnerability to yards after the catch. I mean, that has to be a point of emphasis this week, I imagine, for Kyle Shanahan and the offense. And they also have to take care of the football. Arizona ranks 11th in takeaways per game. SF, on the other hand, they're ranked 19th. So Arizona, they're on the right end of takeaways per game. They forced turnovers, clearly, and they're third in opponent fumbles per game with 1.7. So something to keep an eye on. And that's why I mentioned it earlier, Melissa, when you said that, Brandon Ayuk, he needs to take care of the football. The whole team needs to take care of the football today. Maybe especially Brandon Ayuk, and maybe especially team players that have dealt with fumbles in the past, because Arizona, like I said, is one of those teams, third actually in the league to force fumbles in the game. So take care of the football on Jimmy and also all the other skill players. And another key of this game is going to be the altitude. And the 49ers are already doing what they can to prepare for that. The Arizona Cardinals are not. They are not coming to higher altitude before the game. So they're kind of, I don't know when the Cardinals plan to fly into Mexico City, but whenever that happens, it's going to be quite a shock to them. The 49ers also played in Denver in week 3, I believe, right? So that game, they didn't prepare for the altitude, and they looked gassed towards the end. It was such a, the defense could have potentially gutted a win, I think, but they were just so tired. Like Nick Bosa, I could tell he just looked like he ran out of gas towards the end of the game. And that absolutely, I think, made a difference in how the defense was able to, not really hold the Broncos at the end there. And thankfully, they're preparing for it this time. So I think that is going to go a long way in this game. You guys, it really does make a difference. So be happy that the 49ers are in Colorado getting ready for it now. Even if they traveled a little bit extra in order to do that, it is 100% worth it, I think. And I think it's going to be an advantage for the 49ers come Monday night. We're going to see it. All right. So those are my keys of the game. Take advantage of the Cardinals secondary. Take advantage of them being terrible against yards after the catch. Take care of the football and be altitude ready. They are going to be altitude ready. So I feel really good about this game and the offense being able to score more points in this game than they have in, recent weeks. But another good point that Jordan made on his Twitter was that, scoring throughout the NFL, the entire league is down this season. And so the 49ers not scoring as many points as, we're kind of used to them scoring, I guess, is a victim of that, I guess you can say. But I think it's just a matter of defenses being better prepared for what a lot of offenses are doing. Could be a variety of reasons, but it's not just the 49ers who are somewhat struggling with this. But again, I do feel like this is going to be one of those good games that the 49ers should be able to score more points in and be more efficient in the red zone. So that's what I'm looking forward to. And if I don't see it, I'll be a little disappointed. I'm not going to lie to you. So I think the offense is it should look good. Should look good. Michelle says Bosa's mic'd up was great. Yes, it was. Some good content always. He's quite the character. Melissa says, appreciate you, Steph. Whether you do it or not, your vids are a pleasure, both the imitations and the regular talking 49ers. I appreciate it, Melissa. And by the way, guys, I am so close to being able to monetize on YouTube. I am like 100 watch hours away. So I appreciate all the support. If you guys like this video, if you guys subscribe, if you guys share this video, like it helps so much. And I appreciate each and every one of you who come and watch these videos. Ronnie says, does the team chip Zach Allen or JJ Watt? I think JJ Watt would be the one that the 49ers would need to chip, if anyone, because he's going up against Mike McGlinchey for the most part. So I think McGlinchey might need that help, right? I trust Trent Williams and Aaron Banks is going to be okay, that they'll be okay against Zach Allen. So if I had to pick between either one of those guys, I would be chipping JJ Watt. Brian says, does JJ Watt currently have a heart condition? That is a good point. I haven't seen anyone bring that up, but that could be something to keep an eye on, because with high altitude, there's certain conditions you don't really want to mess with. I don't know if heart condition is one of them, but something to keep an eye on for sure. Yeah, Melissa says he did have a health scare with his heart. Yeah, not sure if that would potentially, if the elevation or altitude would potentially impact that, or vice versa, whatever. Something to think about. That's a good point, Brian. Glad you brought that up. All right, guys. That's all for my preview today. Tomorrow, I will be previewing the 49ers defense going up against the Arizona offense. And make sure you tune into that one as well. But have a good rest of your evening. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe if you have not yet. Appreciate all the love. And have a good rest of your night. Peace.